Okay, so what we have to do, gift sampling. That means you start with a random assignment of colors to the words, and then you change. Suppose you don't know the color of the first word in the first document. I want to change that. So let us look at the. I have marked it black here. I have not put any color, and this is the topic assignment for that particular word. So let us look at the topic proportion. So let us look at doc 1, red topic 1. There are two words belonging to red topic, 2 belonging to blue topic, and 0 belonging to topic 3. So what you do is that you take the majority. So you take red. This is the majority. Or actually here there is a tie. So these two are the majority. Okay. How do I break the tie? Now let us see. So I can either put red or blue. So now in this, you see for this word, so there is one red, one from topic 1, 0 from topic blue, and 1 from topic green. Okay, 1 from topic green. All right. So maybe if it is a tie between red and blue, red wins the tie, because if we red is the majority here. So here the majority is this, and here the majority is this and this. Here the majority is this and this. Okay, so you could choose either this or this. You can choose either this or this. Since this is agreeing to both, I'll choose red as the topic assignment. So instead of this breaking tie and this kind of thing, let us do it in this way. Let us multiply this by this. Let us multiply 2 into 1. That is the score for labeling the red topic to this word. I want to label this word. This is the score for 2 into 1 is the topic score for labeling red. 2 into 0 is the score for labeling blue, and 1 into 0, just the product of these two probabilities I am taking. This not probabilities, these two scores I am taking. So now if we look at this product score between doc and word, now we see the red topic wins. So I should color it red. Understood? So let me repeat the process. So what I am doing is that I look at doc 1, I look at word 1 in doc 1. I don't know its color. I know the color of the rest of the words in this document and across the corpus. So I have this is the color for the rest of the words in this document, and this is the color for that word across the corpus. Color means topic. So we see that the proportion of different topics except for this word is as follows: 2 to 0. Similarly, the proportion of topics except for coloring this particular instance of the word is 101. So what we do is that we multiply these two scores, the doc score and the word score, and we get the total score. Right now, for this word, I have a score for topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. Whichever topic is the highest according to this score, I put that color. And next time, once this is colored red, now we want to find the color of this. I want to find the color of this. I repeat the same process. I keep the color of all other words across the corpus and in this document to be constant. And this word DNA, I try to put a color. I repeat the same process. I calculate for doc 1 what are the proportions, and for the word DNA what are the proportions. Multiply these two scores, take them highest. Actually, what I will do is slightly different. Instead of putting such deterministic color according to the maxima, I will generate a color proportional to this probability. In this case, the probability is 2 to 0 to 0. I have to normalize. So 2 to 0 to 0, proportional to these probabilities, I will take a color. Maybe the color red will come up. So again, this is kind of a three-faced dice. I'm throwing a three-faced dice, or I'm picking a ball from a box with three color, where there are three colored balls. There are two red balls, 0 blue balls, and 0 green balls. So if I pick up a ball randomly from this, most probably I'll get a red ball, and I'll color it red. So this is probabilistic. That means you actually pick up from a box where there are different three color balls of three type of color, and the number of balls of each particular color is proportional to the product of these two scores. And this way I color them. So it's not deterministic, it's according to this probability. But now there is a problem. You see, if any of this score is 0, this product will be 0. So if we try to generate from proportional to these probabilities, most of the probabilities will be 0. Only 1 or 2 probability will remain, or maybe this probability will also become 0. So you will always get everything will be colored red or something like that. We don't want that. We want a little bit of other things also. So you don't want a 0 probability, which is very likely because you are taking product. So to solve for this, we kind of offset 0 probabilities. What we do, instead of taking this raw scores 220 or 101, you do a smoothing. You take 2 plus alpha, where alpha is a small number, 2 plus alpha, 0 plus alpha. This will be beta. You take 1 plus beta, 0 plus beta, 1 plus beta, and then multiply. And then take the generate a color proportional to these probabilities, proportional to these probability vectors. Okay, so what this alpha and beta they do is that they do a smoothing. Do a smoothing. Okay, so your entire process algorithmically will be like this. You take a corpus, start with a random coloring of the words, and do not color the first word in the first document, and compute these values, the proportion of topic 1 in doc 1, topic 2 in doc 2, topic 3 in doc 2, doc 1, and this proportion of these words, topic 1 in word 1, topic 2 in word 2, and so on. Add a small smoothing factor alpha and beta to each of them, multiply them, so you get 3 different scores. Generate a color proportional to the scores, and probability is proportional to the scores, label it as that color. Now keep that color as constant. Now look at the second word. Try to color it, keeping all other colors constant. Follow the same process. This way, you will color all the words in all the documents. And once you have colored all the words in all the documents, you can easily construct this. And once you have constructed this and this, you can easily construct those two multinomial matrices. In fact, you can work out a small example easily. And this is a very simple program, very easy to write program. You just count these quantities. This alpha and beta, this actually turns out nothing but the parameters of the Dirichlet distribution. To Dirichlet, you have considered alpha and beta. So this comes from the topic document word Dirichlet. So this alpha comes from this Dirichlet topic document, and this beta comes from this Dirichlet. So they control the sparsity. As I have told you before, that they control how much. So if we don't put alpha and beta to be 0, they will be completely sparse. They will be one word only. We want little bit of spread. So higher your value of alpha, more spread you have, more smoothing you have. The less the value of alpha and beta, less smoothing you have. So this controls these sparsity parameters. Okay, so this is what we do. Okay, so now let me explain. So I think this you have understood. Now let me explain it more mathematically. So what are the parameters we have? We have the the um, the two multinomials. Those are the parameters. So those two entire matrices, all of them are parameters. We call them beta and theta. Beta and theta. And we have the topic assignments and we have the words to topic assignment. Right. So you have these are the parameters. So this theta, ZDN, WDN, and this beta. So two multinomials, sorry, these two are the multinomials and these two are the Dirichlet. We, for the moment, we assume that this alpha and beta are given. They are assumed. Okay, so if you take this plate model, if you, I have done it out here, if you write down the joint distribution of all these theta, beta, z, and w, you will get this factorization. You will get this factorization based on this direct influence and other considerations. You will get this factorization. So from this, if you likelihood you can estimate the joint, but what we are actually interested in is that we are interested in the multinomials, the topic assignment to words given the word. This is the only observable thing. This is the only observable thing given the words. So this is the posterior of, this is a latent variable. These are the parameters. Latent variable is the topic allocation to a document. So latent variable plus parameter given the observable W. So this posterior probability we are interested in. So you know in Gibbs sampling, if we have this posterior probability given this, we can estimate it following way that we know the conditional probability Z given the rest of the words. That is what Gibbs sampling does, the observables and the documents. And I am again not doing the full Gibbs sampling derivation. The derivation is a bit long. You can consult the textbook. That the entire derivation of the Gibbs sampling steps given this model, given this joint model is given. I'm not going to that. I'll give you the final result. So let us look at some of these quantities. So Zi is the topic assigned to the ith word in the collection. Di, note that the Zi will change. Zi is a random variable. Okay, so the ith word can take different values of Zi. Di is the document containing the ith token. This also will be multiple. Wi is the word type of the ith token. What type means the topic of the ith token. Z minus I is the set of topic assignments to all other tokens besides the ith token. And this dot I have told other hyperparameters like alpha. Oh, so here it is eta again. So alpha and beta hyperparameters of the Dirichlet. Two matrices I have already talked about. This is the word to topic assignment, the second multinomial, and this is the document to topic assignment. That is the topic proportion, the first multinomial. These two matrices I have talked about. So if we derive the Gibbs sampling rules, they will actually look like this. The posterior probability that Zi equal to Z, that means the jth topic is assigned to the ith word. The jth topic is assigned to the ith word given the assignment of the rest of the words, the observed word, and the document in which I have observed the word. That information I need. I need that it is from doc1 and the other hyperparameters, alpha, beta, and all those things. This is, as I have said, the product of two probabilities. Product of two probabilities. The CWT is nothing but these values, this count rather, these values, CWT are these values without the eta. And this is the smoothing factor, eta or beta, that we talked about, normalized by the row-wise sum, plus the this is a factor by you have, because you have added the smoothing factor, you have to add the corresponding normalizing factor in the denominator. This is basically number of words time eta. Similarly here, this is the top, this thing, these values in the, these values 2 and 1. So these are entries of this matrix plus the smoothing factor, normalized by the row sum or the column sum here maybe, and total number of length of the document into this parameter alpha to take care of the smoothing factor. Okay, so the product of these two gives you the probability that J is the topic for the ith word in document DI. Okay, the same as that thing. So as I have said, these are the probabilities, and this will basically give you this probabilities with some normalization. We generated some color according to these probabilities and color, and then move on to the next one. Okay, so this is what it says. This can be derived. I'm not giving you the derivation, it's pretty long. In the textbook it is given. Okay, so these are the, and if you see actually that I have talked about this multinomial matrices. I've talked about this multinomial matrices. If we look at each of the term in this expression, each of these product terms in this expression, they are nothing but the terms of this. This is the word topic matrix terms, and this is the document topic proportion matrix terms. In this iterative process, we start with a random. So this beta ij is this word topic matrix, and this theta dj is this topic document matrix. So this is the word topic matrix, and this is the document topic matrix. Okay, so initially with a random coloring, you start with some random value of these two matrices, and as you update this according to this coloring or equation greedily by Gibbs sampling, this matrix values get updated. They keep on getting updated till they converts to a value. Again, there is a proof that this always converges. You can actually show that this always converges. Basically, since Gibbs sampling always converges, this will also always converge. This is an example of Gibbs sampling. And after your training is over, some number, actually it is seen that few iterations are only required. And then you get these matrices, and that's what you're, note that the Dirichlet are priors, they're assumed, they're not learned from the data, they're assumed, they are the smoothing factors, you get some values. And at the end of your training process, Gibbs sampling process, given some value of alpha and beta or eta, you get some converging value of this word document and document topic matrices, and these are your final LDA model. You can do many things from this model. You can do okay, so these I have explained. You can do many things from this model. For example, let me come back to this picture. For example, once I have got these final matrices after my learning, after convergence, these final matrices I have got, I've assumed values of alpha and beta. I can do many things. For example, I can find document to document similarity. What is the similarity between doc1 and doc2? I take the dot product between cosine similarity between these two vectors. All right. Or let's say I want to characterize a topic. I'll just pick up the top words from this top probability words from these rows. I'll characterize the topics. Okay, so once you have got these two matrices, you can do information retrieval, you can do clustering, you can do document clustering, you can do word clustering, whatever you want, you can do once you have got this. So you can think of every row here is a characterization. What is the difference with TF-IDF? TF-IDF would be also a vector kind of like this, those who know IR, but these columns should be words. Here, instead of words, I am using topics. The advantage is I can solve the synonymy problem, I can solve the polysemy problem, all such things I can solve. So this is also a document vector. And once I have got a document vector, I can do document clustering, document classification, retrieval, whatever. Okay, and this can help me find out what clouds or whatever you want. Okay, so once you have got these matrices, you have learned these matrices, you can do many things. That's the LDA, that's the topic model. So those two matrices are basically the topic models, along with the priors, of course, which you have assumed. Okay, so let me just restate. So this basically means probability that topic J is chosen for word I, conditioned on all other assigned topics, everything Z minus I. And this is the count number of times a word token Wi was assigned a topic J across the corpus, and this is the number of times the topic J was already assigned to some topic D. This is for that particular word, for that particular document. Okay, so these two have already talked about. This is the first top row in that diagram, and this is the bottom row in the diagram. In these diagrams, there's the meaning. Unfortunately, I'm not doing the derivation. You can very well derive this. Again, this is a proportionality. There is a very big and cumbersome normalization factor here. Okay, this is unnormalized. This is finally what we will get from those two matrices. If we look at a particular document, this is say doc1. If we look at doc1, this vector is what we will get. I can write it down as an histogram. X-axis is the topic, y-axis is the proportion of the topic in the document. So I can look at this histogram. I can visualize this histogram to analyze the content of this document based on the topics. I can look at the topic versus word thing. So this is the word cloud. So this is topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, topic 4. These are the word clouds having high probabilities or non-zero probabilities of belonging to topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, topic 4. And you can form these white clouds to describe your topics, and maybe you can visualize a document like this. If you color the topics as to some particular color, you can label the words based on this thing, what topics they come from in the generative process. Note that one word can have multiple colors depending on how it is generated from which topic. You can color them, you can visualize the document, you can find document similarity. Okay, so all this you can do once you have learned this. So this is a very powerful model. This is this need not be restricted to text only. You can have your tokens or words can be image features. In fact, it was very much used as an image feature. It can be image features, and your collection can be a collection of images. Your words can be, if you have your collection is a document is a DNA, and each word is a gene. You can think of it as a bag of genes. A DNA is a bag of genes. We are forgetting about the sequences. And then a topic of a gene, a topic is a collection of genes representing, say, a particular phenotype or a characteristics. And you can do a topic modeling, all such things. There are some hyperparameters, number of topic, alpha and beta, the Dirichlet parameters, the length of a document. That is a very important thing. Length of a document, I am assuming to be constant and known. that comes actually in the normalizing factor. So what people have done is that they sometimes assume a distribution on the length, say a Poisson distribution or something on the length itself, and estimate that distribution also from the data. But we are not going into so much complication. Okay, if we ignore the normalizing factor, you need not know the length. There are many extensions to LDA. Basically, that plate model that we talked about, it can be extended. So what this? If we forget about this, if we forget about these two parts, or maybe if you keep one part, then it is the standard LDA. Standard LDA. But we assume in LDA is that the topics are not correlated to each other. So, but also the topics can have some correlation among each other. So you have an additional parameter sigma. So you have an additional parameter sigma, which is kind of the correlation or covariance among the topics. So you have a slightly alternate plate model with an additional parameter beside the Dirichlet parameters, and these also acts as kind of smoothing parameters. And then you have another factor, a more complex factorization of the joint distribution using this sigma and mu and all those. And using a similar Gibbs sampling, you can learn this. Note that Gibbs sampling is just one way of learning. There are many other ways. For example, you can use variational inference. If you go to the textbook, the original David Bley, who proposed Topot model, he actually gave a variational inference learning mechanism for LDA, not the Gibbs sampling. Then you have dynamic topic models. You have multiple topic models changing over time. So if you do topic tracking, how does a topic, say election topic in USA, how does it peak and change over time? So you have multiple topic models. You have polylingual topic models. So you have one topic model per language, and then there is a translation model between the languages. Right. So you can have a polylingual topic model. This need not be different languages. It can be across collections also. Okay, say all the research articles and news articles, you can mix them. Say all the SMS topic model and a general research Wikipedia topic model, you can combine them. Okay, so there is another important topic that I'm not talking about, is how do you evaluate? Given those two matrices, what topic, document topic, how do you know it is a good topic assignment? Okay, so there are many measures. One way is something called a perplexity, or a part topic mutual information between the word and a document. So these you can compute. And this kind of, see, the reason evaluating topic model is important is that just like clustering, you have to choose the number of topics, say 3 topic or 4 topic. So what is the right choice? So what you do, you learn with a 3 topic, k equal to 3, learn a topic model, again learn with k equal to 4, you compare these two and see which is better, and this way choose the right number of topics. Okay, different ways you can shuffle the words, compute mutual information, and this will act as an evaluation. So there is a parameter called perplexity, which measures how well a topic model is. Basically, the part topic, for every topic, so given a topic, what is the mutual information between a word and a document? Given a coloring, so given the colors of a word, how much information I have about the different colors of a document between a word and a document? So this gives this should be low. Okay, so in summary, there are many other applications. There are many extensions. So this was around 2005. Since then, there are numerous extensions. There are extensions to graphs. For example, you have a Facebook network, and let's say the topics are kind of groups, and individual user is a word. So how do you combine words to form groups? How do you measure similarity between two users in terms of the groups they belong to? So all these can be done using topic modeling. Okay, so let me quickly summarize. So it enables analysis of large unannotated corpora. Of course, you need a small corpora to start with. You start with a random value. You need a corpora and later you can extend it. You don't need, so this is completely unsupervised. You don't need any pre-labeling. You start with a GIF sampling, random value you start and you organize. It's like clustering. It's completely unsupervised. There are some hyperparameters. This assumes a bag of words. This doesn't consider sequences of words. It's just a bag of words. It's unsupervised. It gives you a clustering, and maybe sometimes you need some amount of extrinsic evaluation for how good the clustering is or what are the interpretation of the topics. These are extrinsic. And this is trained using simple Dirichlet and multinomials and combining them in that particular plate model. The advantage of this is that this basic LDA plate model, you can combine them, you can use them as building blocks to construct more complex models. We have seen some examples here. You can combine. So basic plate model is being combined in different ways to construct more complex models. So that's a main advantage. You can do that. You can do approximate inference using GIF sampling, other types of variational inference, and so on. So this is a very powerful method. Most of the machine learning toolboxes or natural language processing toolboxes will have different kind of LDA implementation. So you can very easily use them. What I urge you to try is that maybe just to get a feel, what are the effect of the alpha and beta parameters? What is the effect of the number of topics? How does the matrices, multinomial matrices look like? Parts they are. Just to get a feel, you can take some small corpus and you don't need any labeled data. This is completely unsupervised. This is completely, I think I falsely mentioned sometimes that this supervised. No, just to explain, this is completely unsupervised. You start with some random value and then organize and then cluster using GIF sampling. So you take some small corpus, you take any standard implementation of LDA, you run it, you change your values of alpha and beta, you look at how those matrices, topic word and document topic matrices look like. And then maybe you can look at clusters of documents, try to interpret the topics in terms of the word they contain, and so on, just to get a feel. But this is a very powerful tool. It is used in lots of places, not just in natural language processing. Okay, maybe I'll just tell about some research issues. Maybe some of you will take it up. Model interpretation, model checking. So how do you compare two topic models? This is a very important problem now. How do you use more complex structure beside bag of word? How do you use discourse? How do you use linguistic structure? Say the grammatical structure. How do you use sentence sequences? All these can you enhance your standard topic model by considering this. The good thing is that you can just enhance your plate model to take care of all these things. And secondly, note one thing, that this topic modeling is just some update. The GIF sampling is very fast. It takes very less time. So even if you have a large corpus, it doesn't take much of it. It's as easy as building your TF-IDF model. You just keep on updating value, few iterations, maybe just some constant times the time taken by TF-IDF model. You just keep on updating this matrix. Only thing is that you need to store those matrices in some data structure. Okay, and then these are very fast. These are very fast because of this approximate inference, GIF sampling. So once you have built these topic models, how do you do it? How do you interface with other applications? That's the main charm. how do we use it for information retrieval? How do you use it in a user interface? How do you use it to suppose I already have some information beside the display in the form of some annotation. How do you use that? So how do you combine with other text manipulation tools? So these are very interesting. Many industry do use a lot of topic modeling. So the financial industry, when they analyze documents, the science, the biology and the other people, the social networks, of course, text modeling. So lot image modeling. In fact, this topic modeling is now more used for image processing than text processing. So there are a lot of uses. It is interesting to combine them and get the results. Okay, so I stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask. And this brings us to the end of topic modeling. We'll start a new topic next time.